Well, hello there, watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see then what is making the headlines with the political editors of the Daily Mirror and The Sun, Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole. They will be with us from now until just before midnight. As ever, though, to the front pages first of all. And The Guardian leading with the Liverpool explosion story. They write about the terror threat level being raised to severe. The Telegraph also going with that. They have an image of Ahmed al-Swilmin, the man who police believe made and detonated a bomb. The Metro quotes the taxi driver, David Perry's wife, who described him as lucky to be alive after his cab was blown up yesterday outside a hospital in Liverpool while he was sitting inside it. The Eye splashes with the Prime Minister's plea for people over the age of 40 to get COVID booster jabs, for which they will become eligible. The Manchester Evening News and a number of its sister titles carry the same front page, reacting to the decision to abandon the leg of the HS2 high-speed rail line that would have run between the Midlands and Leeds. The Yorkshire Post says the decision puts the government's levelling up agenda in doubt. The Financial Times leads with Royal Dutch Shell's decision to change where it is domiciled for tax purposes from the Netherlands to the UK. So let's get the thoughts then of Pippa and Harry, and starting with the incident now described as a terror attack, Pippa, in Liverpool, and the suspect in that named this evening with an appeal for police, really, for people to come forward with any information about him.
Yes, I mean, this is not as straightforward a case as sometimes these incidents are, in that it's emerged that the suspect, Ahmed al-Swilmin, who was originally from the Middle East and I think came to the UK via Syria, had in fact converted to Christianity, and that the police also feel that he may have had mental health issues. So it's been obviously branded a terrorist incident by the police, but that's as much to do with the methodology of the attack as it is the motivation. Obviously, it looks like it was some sort of suicide device, although there are also questions over whether it possibly detonated sooner and whether the hospital was in fact the intended final destination for the bomb. As you know, it was Remembrance Sunday, and the hospital is not far from the main Liverpool Cathedral Memorial Service, Remembrance Sunday service that was going on. So the question marks there too. And it is, of course, it's possible that the device detonated earlier. The Guardian raises some of those questions. Clearly, the police have a lot more work to do. They've been out on the streets of Liverpool since the incident. There are several arrests have been made, but there are big question marks remaining as to what the ultimate motivation was, even though they've identified the suspect.
And as the Guardian points out there, the terror threat level raised, Harry. This is after also the death of David Amos, and in a sense, we were reminded today it's to increase the vigilance of all of us.
Yeah, that's right. They're not saying those two events are linked, but the fact that both happened in a month meant that the Joint Intelligence Committee that looks at the terror threat with the advice of Cobra, after a discussion on advice of security officials, have said that it does mean that another attack is highly likely. And there are real fears tonight, speaking to sort of security world, that this could be quite a tricky winter. The security services we've been reporting for weeks now are pretty much at breaking point. They are hit by a sort of perfect storm of tight budgets and the end of lockdown, increasingly radicalized people, lone wolves, who many of them aren't on the radar, so to speak, already. And the sort of word they use for these sort of attacks are Nike attacks, because they just do it, and there's not many things you can do to stop it. We saw with David Amos a very simple but brutally effective attack, and whereas this one was a little bit more complicated, and thankfully, touch wood, it appears that it did not go off as intended. That said, I think the really interesting thing that's really struck me in the last sort of 48 hours since the 36 hours since the attack is if you look back at how Greater Manchester Police, who are overseeing this now as a part of the sort of Northwest Terror Response Unit, obviously were heavily criticised in the wake of the Manchester Arena bombings, where there was almost a void of information and intelligence shared with Five Eyes allies like the United States was starting to appear in the New York Times before it was appearing in British media. And I think there's been a real concerted effort actually to release information, accurate information, as and when it happens. We almost know more about the suspect, and I have to say it would have been a grisly process of identification. It took a long time to get to a stage where even now they're saying we strongly believe it is this person. It's still not possible to formally identify that what is left of that body, but they are being very open with the information they have and trying to shut down that sort of void of misinformation that can erupt very quickly with social media, as it did in the wake of the Manchester bombing. So I think that in itself is worth noting as a grim time, but a marked improvement by a police force that has had it in the air rightly for many months, hopefully beginning to get a better grip on these sort of things.
Yes, a lessons learned moment, no doubt. But much of that evidence, no doubt, is coming from the taxi driver who was in the vehicle and, as we see from the Metro, is indeed lucky to be alive, as we found out from the statement from his wife. Pictured there, Rachel and David, seen, and he's seen it right at the bottom there, escaping those flames. Quite an extraordinary for him to get out of that.
Yeah, well, that footage was incredible, wasn't it? Where somebody caught on CCTV or on a camera phone, the car pulling into the car park of the hospital, and you see this grey smoke emerging from it, and as the device goes off, and then this figure emerging from the car and running away. And it later obviously transpired it was the taxi driver David Perry, and here's his wife saying, frankly, what that footage showed us all was that he was lucky to be alive. And, you know, we sort of throw the term a hero around an awful lot, but to have had the presence of mind to lock, it looks like he locked the suspect in the car and, you know, as we said, possibly wasn't the final destination and possibly prevented a much more serious incident. We threw that term hero around, and in this case, it's very highly deserved. And I know that lots of people are suggesting that he should be awarded with some sort of civilian honour, but you know, I'd be amongst them. I'd be happy to see that. I think that it's the sort of presence of mind, the sort of instinctive bravery that he showed there could have potentially averted a much bigger disaster. And it's going to be fascinating in the coming days to hear more from him as to how he felt and how he acted the way he did, why he acted the way he did, and as we learn more about the incident.
Absolutely. We'll wait and see how that investigation continues, shall we, and see what more information they release. But moving on to another story, headache for the government potentially towards the end of this week, which is rail. And already the northern newspapers not happy about this, as we can see from many of them, Harry.
Yeah, so we saw the long-awaited sort of levelling up integrated rail review that will look at how journey times and capacity can be increased across areas of the rail infrastructure, the creaking rail infrastructure, many would say, that has not had the same attention and investment that the South East and London have had. Now, it strikes me as this is a sort of announcement that's gone off a little bit cack-handedly because elements of it were dripped out over the weekend. Crucially, the key fact that the sort of open secret in Whitehall, really, and we've all been sort of writing, expected to, the leg that goes of HS2, the railway that will one day be built, but not anytime soon, won't be now going to Leeds, and instead investment in rail will be going into different parts of the railway around Leeds. Leeds will get its own tram system, apparently, but there crucially won't be that ability to get the same high-speed train all the way from London to Leeds. So big disappointment tonight. The whole review is coming on Thursday. I would argue that it would probably have been a wiser move, perhaps, if you were going to trail some of this stuff, to do it in papers like the Yorkshire Post or the Manchester Evening News or papers in Leeds, because it seems to me that the regional press has seen dribs and drabs and topspin in Sunday papers and are rightly very angry about it. Obviously, the Manchester Evening News leading the way with the Reach Group, who associated with the Mirror. The Yorkshire Post, there, obviously another great big northern paper. However, not getting involved in that. It's a different company that publishes that. But it's clear, regardless of the slightly dated graphic, but it's clear the message on across all the papers is the same. That actually, come on, Boris Johnson was swept to power, given his majority on grand promises of infrastructure spending and levelling up and investment in the north. And needs to start sort of putting that money where the mouth is. There will be £96 billion invested across the region, but it does seem, so far doesn't seem to be landing or being sold particularly well.
And I guess on these train projects, Pippa, it's the double whammy of HS2, which was from London to Birmingham, then off in a Y, wasn't it? One to Manchester and the Northwest, and then the other one to Leeds. And then you've also got the Northern Powerhouse rail line, which was the east-west line across the Pennines between Manchester and Leeds, and all those towns in between who were desperate for that connectivity. And the double whammy of both of these seemingly being pulled is what's getting in their throat, certainly. What is this? Is this the Chancellor saying no? What's happened?
Yes, well, discussions have been going on for some time between the Treasury and Number 10 about the rail infrastructure element of Boris Johnson's levelling up plans. And as we know, the Chancellor's job, any Chancellor's job, is to try and rein in the spending of a Prime Minister, and particularly in this case where we have a Prime Minister whose natural inclination seems to be to spend more than some Conservatives are comfortable with, and a Chancellor who, despite the extra money he was lucky enough to end up with at the budget, is still nevertheless very conscious of the huge amount we spent on the response to the coronavirus crisis, and the fact that going forward there's some very difficult choices ahead. This is one of those difficult choices, and it looks like that for the time being the Treasury has won this particular battle. Obviously, we'll have to wait till Thursday to see all the detail, but for all those people across swathes of the North Yorkshire and bits of Humberside who were promised what their definition of levelling up transport infrastructure was one of the key aspects of that, and to be promised a high-speed rail line, a new one, and to find that actually only a very small portion of that is going to be built, and you're going to end up with upgrades to existing lines instead. Particularly when, regardless, these sorts of upgrades take a very long time to come to fruition. So even if the government's saying, well, actually, it's going to save us money and we'll be able to deliver speedier trains and capacity, just do it more cheaply, people will need to see it to believe it. And there's already a lot of sort of fears on the Tory backbenches that for all the talk of sleaze bringing Boris Johnson down, or at least damaging him, actually the thing which penetrates most with voters is delivery. And if his flagship project of levelling up the country, one of the key aspects of that, isn't able to deliver any sort of tangible benefit to people's lives by the next election, then he's potentially on more shaky ground. So this has potentially huge electoral consequences. We'll have to see the detail on Thursday, but it will inevitably be painted by the opposition as promises made and promises broken, and that's dangerous territory for Boris Johnson.
Well, Boris Johnson's certainly sounding very positive about it in the news conference today that he gave, but perhaps that is expectation management, one wonders. To be fair to the government, the suggestion is they think similar reductions in journey times can be achieved by upgrading existing lines and adding new sections. But as you say, we await the details, don't we, on Thursday on that one. Lots more still to come. Will COVID booster jabs for the over 40s allow us all to have something like a normal Christmas? We will discuss that after this. Well, welcome back. You're watching the press preview. With me now, Pippa Crerar and Harry Cole. Welcome back to both of you. So, Harry, to the eye then, get the booster jabs to save Christmas. All hail the vaccine once again as pretty much the only route out of this in England, at least. Tell me more.
Absolutely treated not one but two prime ministerial press conferences in 24 hours. Boris Johnson was back with the classic lineup today of Boris and the Boffins, Chris Whitty and Professor Vallance, as they sort of bang the drum. Yes, once again. So 40-year-olds will now shortly be able to apply for their booster jabs, and you can see it won't be long before 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds and everyone will have a booster jab. There's a really interesting point in the press conference today where the PM kind of let slip. I didn't think it wanted to be his main message of the day, but he basically implied that eventually 3 jabs will be the definition of fully vaccinated. So, as you know, with the vaccine passports to travel for hassle-free travel, I suppose, and for entry into large events as we currently have, it will be on the NHS vaccine pass. It will be 3 jabs required. Now, it doesn't take a cynic to wonder how long that would be 4 jabs. And Nadeem Zahawi very recently, when he interviewed at COP, again, former vaccine minister, said eventually it will just be an annual booster. So, we've been hearing about this, the jab all year, and I suspect we'll be hearing about it for a lot longer. But frankly, if it works, if it is the way of keeping the economy open, all the anti-vaxxers of the world can scream until they're blue in the face. But if it works, people are going to take it.
Yeah, and we see nations like Austria, for example, with rules for the unvaccinated that are different for the vaccinated in terms of lockdown. But just very quickly on this, Pippa, in terms of the language the Prime Minister's using, storm clouds brewing, the waves are rolling in, and many epidemiologists are suggesting that we've been in this wave since about June, in fact. So what's he talking about?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, there are rising cases in some European, particularly Eastern European countries, rising quite starkly. But one of the charts they showed today showed that actually British case numbers are much higher than our closest neighbours, some of our closest neighbours, France, Spain, Germany. And so, we've been some way ahead of them on case numbers and are fairly equal to them in terms of vaccinations as well at the moment. So we're not in a great position. And it struck me as rather odd that the Prime Minister was sort of suggesting that these cases are all going to arrive from Europe. And of course, some people will bring COVID with them, but all the scientists suggest that the single biggest factor when it comes to determining case numbers domestically is domestic measures. So the fact that we don't have any currently in England, obviously doing Scotland and Wales, but no face masks compulsory or anything like that, is probably the single biggest factor why our case numbers are high. But as everybody's already said, vaccines seem to be the way out of this. If we want to have a normal Christmas, he suggested, then people need to get their jabs. And the prospect of having another Christmas like last one hopefully will encourage a few more people to go and get that booster. Yeah,
we're running out of time. Let's just see the story we were going to talk about, which was the Metro. Labour plan to ban MPs working as consultants. And in 10 seconds, Pippa, just remind us what's going to happen then on Wednesday.
This is Keir Starmer has said that he's going to table a motion in the Commons on Wednesday to give MPs the chance to back a ban on MPs working as consultants or company directors. Given all the furore over second jobs, this is quite a specific aim. He's basically saying to MPs, including across the House on the Tory side, time to put your money where your mouth is. You're not happy about all of this, time to act.
Pippa, Harry, both of you, thank you very much. I haven't got time to hear your thoughts. I'll have to do it later on. Thank you both very much indeed.
We'll return to it.
We'll see them shortly. Here's the weather.